The first swing. The arena was silent, waiting for the clash. The air smelled of dust, sweat, and burning torches. Hundreds of alien eyes stared down from the tall stone walls, eager to see blood spill on the sand. She stood in the center, tall and proud. Her blade glowed with a faint blue light, sharp enough to cut through steel. Her name was Soraya, Princess of the Veil Empire. She had trained since childhood to master every weapon, every strike, and every form of combat. No one in her kingdom had ever defeated her. Before her stood the human. His wrists bore the scars of chains recently broken. His clothes were torn and stained with dirt. He had no weapon, no armor, nothing but his body. To the crowd, he looked weak, fragile, even pitiful. To Soraya, he looked like a target waiting to be crushed. The announcer's voice thundered across the arena. By the will of the council, the human will face trial by combat. Should he win, he earns his freedom. Should he fall, his body feeds the sand. Laughter erupted from the audience. To them, it was not a fight, but an execution. How could a weaponless man defeat Soraya, the sword mistress of the empire? Soraya raised her blade, her lips curving into a cold smile. "This will be quick," she said, her voice low but sharp. Her eyes gleamed with pride. She wanted to show everyone that humans were weak. She wanted this fight to be a lesson. The human, however, did not move. He stood still, his eyes calm, his breathing steady. He looked at her not with fear, but with quiet patience. It unsettled her, for prey should never look at the predator with such calmness. "Fight me," she demanded, circling him like a hunting beast. Her blade shimmered in the torchlight. "If you will not move, then I will cut you down." Gasps filled the air as Soraya struck. She swung her blade in a deadly arc, a strike that had ended hundreds of lives. The sand hissed beneath her boots as her full strength poured into the swing. Her blade raced toward his chest. But the sound that followed was not the scream of a dying man. Instead, it was the sound of steel stopping, not against armor, not against another blade, but against flesh. The crowd froze, every eye widened, every voice went silent. The human had raised his hand, his bare palm caught the glowing blade, and he held it still. Soraya's eyes widened in disbelief. Her strike should have cut him in half. Instead, his hand gripped the sword like it was nothing more than a wooden stick. Sparks danced across his skin as the blade pressed against his flesh. But he did not bleed. He did not flinch. The silence of the arena broke with whispers. "Impossible," someone muttered. He caught the blade. Another gasped. Soraya pulled, trying to free her weapon. Her muscles strained. Her face burned with fury, but the human's grip did not loosen. His arm did not shake. His eyes remained calm. And then he spoke. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the arena like thunder. "Big mistake," he said. The crowd erupted. Some cheered in disbelief. Others cried out in fear. The council members sitting high above leaned forward, their faces pale. This was not the fight they expected. Soraya felt her pride burn hotter than the suns above. She could not accept this. No human could be stronger than her. She pushed forward, trying to drive the blade deeper, but the human only tightened his grip. With a simple motion, he twisted his wrist. The sound of metal bending echoed across the arena. Her blade, her perfect weapon, began to warp under his hand. The blue glow flickered, and cracks ran along the edge. Soraya gasped. Her weapon was failing. Her strength was failing. And yet, he stood unbroken. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice shaking with anger and disbelief. The human's eyes met hers, steady and unshaken. "I am what you should have never provoked," he replied. The crowd leaned in, whispers spreading like fire. Some shouted for the fight to continue. Others begged for the council to stop it. The arena was no longer a place of execution. It had become a place of revelation. Soraya pulled back, finally wrenching her blade free. Her hands trembled though she tried to hide it. For the first time in her life, she felt the chill of doubt crawl through her chest. The human stepped forward, each step echoing against the silent sand. He did not raise his fists. He did not roar. He did not need to. His presence alone pressed against everyone watching. a weight heavier than stone. And as he stood before her, calm and unbroken, the crowd knew this was no ordinary man. This was a predator in human skin. The first swing had been made, and with it, Soraya realized the truth. This battle would not be hers to win. Whispers in the crowd. The arena did not return to its usual roar. Instead, it was filled with the sound of whispers, low and sharp like blades cutting through the air. The Veil people, proud and cruel, who had come to laugh at the death of a human, now leaned forward in disbelief. "Did you see that?" hissed one voice. "He caught her blade with his hand." Another whispered, "That is not possible," came a third. And yet the proof was there, standing in the sand, unbroken and calm. Soraya, the princess warrior, clenched her warped blade. Her heart thundered. She had never been questioned in battle, never been doubted. Her skill was the pride of her empire, but now the whispers of the crowd struck her sharper than any weapon. The human stood still, his eyes never leaving hers. He looked neither proud nor mocking. He simply looked certain, as though the outcome of this fight had already been decided. That certainty spread like fire through the audience, and their doubt grew with every heartbeat. Some of the younger soldiers in the stands exchanged nervous looks. "If one human can do this, what of the others?" one muttered. "Perhaps the old stories are true," another replied. The word stories carried weight, for generations of the Veil had told tales of humans who once stood as warriors, beasts of endurance and strength, creatures who defied logic. Those tales had long been dismissed as myths. The Veil believed humans were weak. That belief was the foundation of their pride. Now, in this moment, the foundation cracked. Soraya lifted her chin, trying to bury her unease beneath arrogance. "You are nothing," she spat, raising her glowing blade once more. "A trick will not save you a second time." But even her voice trembled at the edges, and the whispers from the stands only grew louder, louder, until it was no longer whispers, but a storm of doubt. The council, seated high in their marble thrones above the arena, leaned closer, their cold eyes narrowed as they studied the human. One of the elder counselors, with skin pale as bone, whispered to another, "It should not be possible," not unless his words trailed off, fear crawling into his tone. The princess launched forward again, her movements sharp and fast, a blur of silver and light. Her strikes aimed to kill, not to test, not to play. This time she swung again and again, a storm of cuts meant to slice the human apart. Yet he moved with ease, his steps were calm, his body bent and turned as though he had danced this battle 100 times before. Her blade kissed the air, but never touched his flesh. Every strike missed, every blow wasted. The crowd gasped louder with each miss. "She cannot land a single hit," someone cried. "He moves like water," another said, "or like death itself," another whispered, shivering. And then it happened. In the middle of her storm, Soraya thrust with all her strength, her blade flashing toward his chest, but he stepped aside with a motion so simple, so casual, it felt like mockery. His hand brushed her wrist, light as air, and the blade flew from her grip, clattering across the sand. The arena erupted in chaos. Half the crowd shouted in shock. The other half cheered in disbelief. The sound rattled the stone walls. Soraya stared at her empty hand, trembling. For the first time in her life, she had been disarmed, and it had been done with a single effortless motion. The human did not pick up the blade. He only looked down at her, his voice calm. "You think strength is only in weapons," he said. His tone was quiet, but every ear in the arena heard it. "But strength is not in steel. It is here." He tapped his chest, and here he touched his temple. The whispers returned, sharper, stronger. The audience began to divide. Some cursed him, calling him a monster. Others shouted in awe. Some even cheered, raising fists in defiance of their own rulers. The council's faces grew dark. Their control was slipping, and all because of one human. Soraya's pride screamed inside her. Rage boiled in her blood. She wanted to strike him with her fists, to break his calm. Yet something stronger than rage began to grow in her heart. Something she did not understand. It was fear. The human stepped closer, and the crowd went silent once more. He stood before her, towering not in size but in presence. His calm felt heavier than 1,000 armies. His words returned, echoing like a hammer to the chest. "Big mistake," he said again, and the sound of it carried beyond the arena walls, into the city, into the ears of a people who would never forget. The whispers in the crowd had changed. They were no longer whispers of disbelief. They were whispers of prophecy. The second challenge. The arena shook with the echoes of voices. Some shouted in rage, some in awe, some in fear. But all eyes remained locked on the human standing calmly in the sand. He had disarmed the princess with only a touch, and the whispers of the crowd had become thunder. Soraya stood frozen for a heartbeat. Her chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. She had never lost her blade, never been humiliated before her people. Her pride burned hotter than fire, and yet her hand trembled. She clenched it into a fist, hiding the shake. The human did not move to attack. He only waited, his gaze steady. His calmness was worse than any strike. It was as if he already knew the outcome, as if everything she did was beneath him. The princess snarled, "This is not over." Her voice cracked like thunder. She raised her hand and called to the guards watching at the edge of the arena. One of them threw another weapon, her spear blade, onto the sand. Its edge gleamed with the same deadly glow. She snatched it up, fury shining in her eyes. "You caught me once, but no one catches me twice," she hissed. Her pride demanded victory. Her blood demanded revenge. The human tilted his head slightly, his expression unchanged. "You still don't understand," he said softly, and then he fell silent again. Gasps ran through the crowd as Soraya lunged. This time she was faster, sharper. Her strikes carried not just skill but desperation. Each swing cut the air with deadly precision. Sparks flew as her blade grazed the stone pillars around the arena. She gave him no rest, no pause, strike after strike. A storm of light and steel rained upon him. But he moved as though the world was slower for him. His body flowed around her attacks. Each step measured, each motion exact. He bent, twisted, leaned. His hands brushed her blade aside without effort. It was not defense, it was dismissal. "Impossible," someone in the crowd cried. "She is the fastest warrior of the Vale," shouted another. "And yet he dances through her strikes," another whispered in awe. The storm of blows ended in a single thrust. Soraya drove her blade toward his heart. All her strength poured into it. Her body screamed with effort. The strike was flawless, perfect, unstoppable. And yet, with a single movement, he turned his shoulder. His hand caught her wrist, gentle but unyielding. The blade stopped an inch from his chest. His grip tightened, and the sword trembled. The arena gasped as he twisted his wrist. In one smooth motion, the blade spun out of her hand, soaring through the air before sinking into the sand, once again leaving her unarmed. Soraya staggered back, her breath ragged. Sweat ran down her skin. Her people had never seen her like this. Beaten not once, but twice, and without her opponent even striking. The whispers returned, sharper, louder. "He plays with her," one soldier muttered. "He could have killed her 100 times already," another said. "Then why does he not?" a third asked. The human looked down at her, his voice quiet. "Because I am not here to kill," he said, "but do not force me." His words carried no anger, no hatred, only warning. The crowd fell silent. The weight of his voice pressed on them, even more than the fight itself. For the first time, the Vale began to see not a prisoner, not prey, but something else, something greater. Soraya's chest heaved. Her pride screamed at her to fight, to rise. But doubt had already taken root. Every strike she had made had failed. Every attempt ended with her weapon on the ground. Yet she could not stop. Her bloodline, her honor, her empire demanded that she continue. Slowly, she bent and picked up her fallen blade. Her hand shook as she gripped it, but she raised it high. "I will not yield," she declared. Her voice rang out, though beneath it was the tremor of fear. The human sighed softly, his eyes darkened. For the first time, he shifted his stance, his feet planted firmly in the sand, his shoulders squared. No longer was he only evading, he was preparing. The crowd sensed the change. A ripple of tension spread across the stands. He's going to fight, someone whispered. This is the end, another said. Even the council leaned forward, their eyes narrowing. Soraya's lips curled into a fierce smile despite her fear. Yes, she whispered. Show me what you truly are. The arena held its breath. The second challenge was not over. It was only beginning. And as the human prepared to move, the fate of all who watched trembled in the air. Secrets revealed. The arena had never been this quiet. Even the wind that carried the desert dust seemed to pause. Soraya stood with her blade trembling in her hand, sweat dripping down her brow. Across from her, the human finally shifted his stance, planting his feet as if he was ready to show what he had been holding back. The crowd leaned forward, thousands of eyes burning with fear and curiosity. Whispers buzzed like insects. What is he? One voice asked. No human should be able to do this, said another. Perhaps the old legends, a third whispered before cutting himself short. The council heard those whispers too. Their expressions tightened. For centuries they had worked hard to erase those legends, to bury the memory of humans as warriors, to paint them only as weak and inferior. But now the past was breaking free, in the shape of one man standing calm in the sand. Soraya lunged again, her pride refusing to bow. Her blade cut through the air with deadly precision. Her strikes came faster, sharper, desperate to prove herself. This time the human did not step aside completely. He raised his arm, blocking with his forearm. Sparks danced as steel met flesh. The crowd gasped, for again his skin did not bleed. In one swift movement, his hand shot forward and grabbed the blade. It bent under his grip like it was soft metal. A loud crack echoed across the arena as the weapon fractured. The glow of the sword sputtered and faded. Soraya stumbled back in shock, her strongest weapon. Broken like a toy, her chest tightened with disbelief. She had lost blades before, but never like this, never to bare hands. The human's voice cut through the silence, low and steady. You still think I'm just a man, he said, but you forget the truth your kind buried. His words carried power, and the audience strained to hear. One of the elder counselors gripped the stone railing and hissed to the others, Stop him! Do not let him speak! But his voice was drowned by the sound of the human continuing. Long ago, the human said, his eyes sweeping across the crowd, your ancestors feared us, not because we were weak, but because we were strong, too strong. He dropped the broken blade into the sand, the sound sharp as thunder. You hid the truth, you taught your children lies, but lies do not last forever. The whispers in the stands exploded into shouts. Some voices cried in denial, others in fear, others in awe. Soldiers shifted nervously, some even backing away from the edge of the arena, as if the human strength might reach them too. Soraya's breath caught in her throat. She had heard fragments of those stories as a child. Forbidden tales whispered in secret. They spoke of humans who once stood against empires, who fought barehanded against machines, who never gave up. She had laughed at them, called them fantasies, but now she was staring at one. Her pride warred with the truth before her eyes. She wanted to strike again, to prove those legends false. But her heart whispered what her pride would not admit. He was stronger than her, stronger than anything she had ever faced. The human stepped closer, and the sand trembled under his weight. Not because of his size, but because of the force of his presence. His calm eyes locked on hers. I did not want this, he said softly. I did not want to fight, but you forced me. And now your people see what you try to hide. The crowd fell into silence again. His words struck deeper than any blade. They pierced not only Soraya's pride, but the very foundation of her people's belief. The council exchanged nervous looks, fear flashing in their eyes. If the truth spread, their power would crumble. Soraya raised what was left of her broken weapon, her hands shaking. She wanted to prove him wrong, but her voice betrayed her. What are you? She whispered. The human's answer was calm, but it thundered in every ear. I am human, he said, and that is enough. The arena erupted into chaos. Some shouted in rage, demanding his death. Others cheered, seeing hope. A dangerous split had begun, a seed planted in the hearts of the people, a seed the council could not allow to grow. High above, one of the counselors leaned close to another and whispered, "If we do not end this now, he will ignite a rebellion." Their cold eyes turned back to the sand below, watching the human stand tall, the broken blade at his feet. Soraya's pride burned, but her spirit trembled. For the first time in her life, she felt small, and for the first time, she believed the whispers of her people might be true. Humans were not weak. Humans were the storm that had been sleeping, and this one had just awakened. Turning of the battle. The arena had descended into chaos. Some shouted in fury, others in awe, and the council sat in silence, their faces pale. Their plan to humiliate the human had turned against them. What was supposed to be a simple execution had become a storm of doubt and fear spreading through their people. Soraya gripped the broken handle of her weapon, her knuckles white. She could not accept what had happened. She was the princess of the Vale, undefeated in combat. Yet here she stood, weapon shattered, pride wounded, and her enemy was not even breathing hard. The human stepped closer, his calm presence heavier than any threat. He did not raise his fists, did not move to strike. He only looked at her, as though waiting for a choice. That calmness was unbearable. It was worse than mockery. It was judgment. The crowd's whispers grew louder. Soldiers shifted uneasily. Some began to cheer for him. Small voices at first, but growing with each moment. "He is stronger," shouted one. "He fights with mercy," cried another. "He could have killed her, but he did not." The idea spread like fire. Soraya's chest heaved. Rage boiled inside her, not just at the human, but at the sound of her people doubting her. She raised her weapon shard and screamed, rushing forward once again, but before she could strike, the human's hand caught her wrist, firm but gentle. His grip froze her in place. He leaned closer, his voice calm yet sharp. "Stop! This battle is already over." The words cut deeper than her broken weapon. Her knees weakened. Her pride screamed at her to resist, but her heart knew it was true. She pulled back, trembling, unable to break free. The council could bear no more. One of them rose, his voice echoing across the arena. "Guards, seize him now." The armored soldiers around the arena hesitated. Their eyes flicked from their rulers to the human standing unarmed in the sand. Their training demanded obedience, but their fear held them back. They had seen what he could do. Some gripped their weapons tightly. Others stepped back. Finally, a commander barked an order, and the guards rushed in, a dozen of them, blades raised, moving as one. The crowd gasped as steel clashed. The human moved, not with rage, but with precision. His body flowed like water. His hands struck not to kill, but to disable. One guard swung at his head. He ducked low, his elbow crashing into the soldier's ribs. The man fell gasping. Another thrust his spear, but the human twisted, grabbed it, and spun the guard into two others, dropping them all to the ground. Within moments, the sand was littered with groaning bodies, none of them dead. The crowd erupted. Their cheers shook the stone walls. "He spares them," shouted one voice. "He fights with mercy, not cruelty," cried another. It was a sharp contrast to the Vale way, a way built on domination and fear. The people saw something different in him, something dangerous not just to the princess, but to their rulers themselves. Soraya stood frozen, watching as her own guards fell one after another. She felt a strange mix inside her. Anger, shame, but also respect. The human had power greater than hers, yet he chose not to kill. That choice spoke louder than his strength. The counselors' faces darkened. They could not allow this to continue. One whispered furiously, "The people cheer him. If this spreads beyond these walls, he will become a symbol we cannot control." The human stood among the fallen guards, his breathing steady, his eyes turned to the stands. "I did not come to destroy," he said, his voice carrying through the storm of voices. "But if you continue to chain me, if you force this fight, then I will not hold back again." The silence that followed was heavy. His words were not just a warning. They were a promise. The crowd felt it. The council feared it. Soraya's weapon slipped from her hand and fell into the sand. Her pride cracked like her shattered blade. Her eyes locked on him. And for the first time in her life, she bowed her head slightly, not in surrender, but in recognition. The human looked at her, then at the council. His presence was like a shadow growing larger than the walls of the arena itself. He had turned the battle, not by killing, but by showing mercy, and mercy was more dangerous than steel. The people's cheers grew louder. The council's fear grew sharper. The princess's pride burned weaker, and the human shadow stretched across the empire. The choice. The arena was filled with noise, cheers and shouts crashing together like thunder. Some cried his name, though they did not even know it. Others demanded his blood. The council sat frozen, their authority cracking with every heartbeat. And in the middle of it all, the human stood tall, calm, unshaken. Soraya knelt in the sand, her weapon gone, her body trembling. Her pride wanted to rise, to fight again, but her heart whispered a truth she could no longer deny. She had lost. Her chest heaved with every breath. Sweat streaked her face. She had never been defeated before. Yet this man had broken her not with cruelty, but with mercy. The human stepped toward her. His shadow fell across her like a storm cloud. His hand reached for her sword arm, and the crowd held its breath. With a single squeeze, he could have ended her, snapped bone, and ended pride. But instead, he held her arm just long enough for her to feel his strength. Then he released it. "You still have a choice," he said softly. His voice carried through the chaos, as if the arena itself wanted silence for him. "You can keep fighting, or you can stop. But know this, mercy is not weakness, and kindness is not surrender." His words struck deeper than any blow. Soraya stared up at him, her chest tightening. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever spared her. Every opponent she faced either died by her blade or yielded to save their lives. This man had done neither. He had shown her a path she had never seen. The crowd began to split. Some voices shouted, "Kill him!" In this, others roared, "Free him, he has earned it." The noise was a storm that even the council could not quiet. High above, the counselors whispered angrily, "She must finish him. If she spares him, the people will turn. They will see him as stronger, as better. It will break our control." Another leaned forward, his voice sharp. "Then force her, order her to kill." But Soraya's hand shook. Her heart no longer obeyed her pride. She looked at the human and saw not prey, not weakness, but something she could not name. He had every chance to kill her, and yet she still lived. For the first time in her life, her enemy had shown her respect. The human turned from her and faced the stands. His voice rang out like steel. "You watch me as though I am a beast in your cage," he said, "but I am not your animal. I am not your slave. I am human, and I will not bow to lies." The crowd roared. His words set fire to their hearts. Some cheered wildly. Others screamed in denial, but all felt the weight of his voice. Soraya rose slowly, her knees weak, her eyes narrowed. Not with rage, but with conflict, she raised her chin and spoke, her voice carrying, "If I strike again, I will lose more than my blade," she said. Her gaze swept the crowd, then the council, finally resting on him. "And if I spare you, I may lose my throne." The human's eyes met hers, calm and steady. "Then choose what you fear less," he said. Her hands trembled. Her pride wanted to strike. Her heart wanted to yield. The council's eyes burned in her back, demanding blood. But the people's cheers rang in her ears, demanding change. At last, she dropped to one knee, lowering her head just enough. The crowd gasped. The sound of thousands inhaling at once filled the air. The princess of the Vale, bowing not to her rulers, not to her people, but to a human. The counselors leapt to their feet in fury. "This is treason," one shouted. "She betrays her blood." Another cried, but their voices were drowned in the storm of cheers rising from the people. The choice had been made. The human looked down at her, his expression unchanged, but his words were quiet and sharp. "Do not mistake this for surrender," he said. "It is the beginning of something greater for both of us." The arena walls shook with the noise. The balance of power had shifted, and though the council still held the throne, the people had seen a new strength, a new path, and it began with a single choice, the choice to bow. The aftermath. The arena was thunder. A storm of voices rose into the night sky. The sound of thousands cheering, shouting, and crying at once shook the very stones. The choice had been made, and nothing could return things to the way they were. The princess of the veil, Soraya, still knelt in the sand, her head bowed, not in weakness, but in something new. Her people had never seen her like this. They had seen her strike, they had seen her kill, but they had never seen her respect an enemy. The human stood over her, not as a conqueror, not as a master, but as a force that could not be ignored. His calm eyes swept the arena. He had no crown, no throne, no army. Yet in that moment, he commanded the people more than the council ever had. High above, the council's fury was plain. They shouted orders, demanding silence, demanding obedience. But the crowd no longer listened. For the first time, their voices were louder than their rulers. "This man is a danger," one counselor hissed. "If we do not end him now, he will inspire rebellion." Another leaned forward, rage burning in his face. "Then kill him, kill her, kill them both if we must." Guards were ordered forward, but many hesitated. They had seen what he had done. They had seen him spare their lives when he could have ended them. To raise their blades again felt like betrayal, not only to him, but to themselves. Some stepped back, lowering their weapons. The cracks in the empire widened. Soraya rose slowly, her eyes turning to the council. "If you order his death," she said loudly, "then you order mine as well." Her voice rang clear, cutting through the chaos. "For I will not fight him again. I will not deny what I have seen." The council erupted in anger. Their voices clashed. Some demanded her removal. Others demanded her punishment. But the people roared louder, their voices now a wave crashing against the marble thrones. The human looked at Soraya, his tone calm. "You understand now," he said. She met his gaze, pride still burning in her, but mixed with something else. Respect, curiosity, even fear. "I understand that everything I was taught may be a lie," she whispered. Her words carried to those closest to the sand, spreading through the crowd like sparks in dry grass. The people began to chant, a single word at first soft, then louder, "Human, human, human." It rose until the whole arena trembled with it. The council's orders drowned, their power fading with every heartbeat. The human did not raise his hands to claim their praise. He did not smile at their support. He only stood, silent, as if measuring what this meant. He had come as a prisoner. He had stood as a fighter. Now he stood as a symbol. Soraya turned toward the people, her heart racing. For the first time, she felt her crown slipping, not from weakness, but because of change. She could see it in their eyes. The people no longer looked at her as untouchable. They looked at him, and they saw something greater. The counselors retreated into whispers, their faces pale. They knew the danger. If the people turned fully, their empire would shatter. "We must crush this seed now," one muttered, but another, older and wiser, shook his head. "The seed has already taken root." As the guards hesitated, as the crowd roared, the human spoke once more, his voice quiet, yet heavy enough to silence the storm. "This is not the end," he said. "This is the beginning. You feared me because you believed humans were weak, but weakness was never our curse. It was your illusion, and now that illusion is broken." The arena froze on his words. His voice echoed against the walls, carrying beyond the gates, into the city, into the empire itself. The people would carry those words home, whisper them, repeat them, spread them until no order, no lie, no chain could contain them. Soraya looked at him, her pride humbled, her heart unsettled. She knew this moment would change everything. He had defeated her blade, her strength, even her crown, but he had not taken them. He had shown her another way, and she could no longer ignore it. The crowd cheered again. The chants rose into the night. The council's fury grew darker, and the human's calm presence spread like a shadow across the empire. He turned once more to Soraya, his final words like a knife and a promise all in one. "Big mistake," he said quietly, "but maybe not your last." And with those words, The arena belonged not to the council, not to the princess, but to the human. The echoes of his defiance, his mercy, and his strength would ripple across worlds, a story that began with a single swing and ended with the birth of something far greater.